you so much. Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the Lurie Daniel Favors Show experience. You are being welcomed into an excerpt of the Lurie Daniel Favors Show, which right now is live on SiriusXM's Urban View, channel 126, where talk empowers and becomes action. If you are here on YouTube, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And yeah, we got a lot to get into this morning. And again, this is a show that is a news show. I don't know how you got here, whether it was from the YouTube videos or Instagram or TikTok, wherever you came from. Those were all clips. This is an excerpt of the actual live show. This is a show that is all shot, no chaser. The news is kind of heavy, and we do heavy very, very well here. So welcome. Let's get into it this morning. All right, so federal government is shut down. Shut down last night at midnight. Oh, I should actually give you some good news first before we get into the horrors that we're going to unpack. Lisa Cook, the Supreme Court, has just released their opinion-ish that basically said the black woman who is a part of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, who Donald Trump is trying to fire because he can't fire the white man, Jerome Powell. And yes, I know his name sounds black as hell, but Jerome Powell is a old white man. And Donald Trump can't stand him because Jerome Powell is in charge of the reserve, and Donald Trump can't fire him because of the way the reserve is set up. So Donald Trump has instead tried to fire the black woman, who's the only black woman serving on the Federal Reserve, because he don't like her. The same way he don't like Letitia James, who is the Attorney General for New York State. And he basically is trying to fire her, though he don't have the power to do so. And they made up a whole bunch of shit about talking about how she got some mortgage fraud, and she said that this was a primary residence when it was a vacation home. Meanwhile, we done seen the documents because she got good ass lawyers, and they was like, no, clearly in the documents it says this was not a primary residence. It wasn't. So they basically accusing her of trying to cheat on some mortgage documents, and they ain't been able to prove nothing. And so the Supreme Court has said you are not going to be able to fire her while you're trying to figure out whatever the hell it is you're accusing her of doing. Because what we do know is that the people who are doing the accusing, their parents and the people in the Republican Party, are the ones who actually have now been outed as engaging in mortgage fraud. But that's a story for another day. Just want to give y'all that news because it's a good thing. And we should have a little bit of good news because everything else is about to follow. It's going to be heavy. Y'all ready? Let's get into it. All right. Government is shut down. That happened at midnight last night. And that basically was because Congress was not able to reach a deal. And by Congress not being able to reach a deal, I mean the Democrats were not able to convince Republicans to stop shafting the American people. The Democrats right now are fighting for people to have access to health care. And that's really, I mean, there are a whole lot of other things they could be fighting for in addition to that. But that's really the most pressing thing, because the big bitch ass bill that the Republicans rammed through, like in the wee hours of the morning on July the 4th. Remember that bill that we talked about, and the fact that it was going to cut almost $1 trillion out of Medicaid. It was going to end food stamps. It was going to end after school programs, the social safety net programs, the daycare programs, the housing programs, the education program. All of that was baked in. And why did they want to do that? Republicans said because, well, their big billionaire friends needed tax cuts, and because Americans just couldn't afford it. Although they still planning to give this $20 billion to Argentina, which we've been talking a lot about. So do with that information what you will. But the Democrats right now are doing basically what they can to ensure that even more millions of people are not going to lose access to their health care. And now this, as a result, is something that the Republicans don't want to agree with. And we're going to talk about what this looks like, because the Republicans right now are lying to y'all's asses. The Republicans are lying big time. They're saying that the Democrats, they want to give health care benefits to illegal immigrants. They want to give health care benefits to people who are not eligible. That is not true. And in fact, if you think it's true, give me a call, 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK, and point out to us where in the budget proposal that the Democrats have put forward that it says that they want to give health care to illegal immigrants, or undocumented immigrants, excuse me. I want you all to take a listen to this clip. Amina, let's do the first one first, and then we'll do the shorter one after. YouTube, hopefully you guys will be able to see this if this actually works. But I want you all to take a listen to this clip. And YouTube, if you can't see it, just listen, because you're going to be able to hear the same thing. And it's important that you pay attention. This is MAGA Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, who represents a district in Louisiana that has more Medicaid-dependent residents than I think any other district in the country, meaning the people who are going to suffer the most, a significant portion of them live in this man's district. I want you to take a listen as he is on CNN talking with Caitlin Collins, and she's basically telling him, y'all are saying that this is something that is bad for the Democrats because the Democrats are trying to get more people who are undocumented to get access to health care. But she's like, that's not true. And I looked at the bill. I know that's not true. I know you're saying that that's what it is, but that ain't what it is. Now, YouTube, let me see if I can share my screen. All right, Amina, let's play the clip.
As you know, people who are here in the United States legally have never been eligible for the Obama Obamacare subsidies for Medicare, for Medicaid. So what exactly are you saying that they're trying to do when you talk about giving free health care to them?
I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so when we passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, we had Medicaid reforms in the bill. You and I talked about it on the air. What we did was to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. There were a lot of people on the program who were enrolled in the program who were never eligible to be there. Medicaid is intended for eligible U.S. citizens, not illegal aliens, not also U.S. citizens who are able-bodied workers, like young men. So we passed the law. The president signed it into law. Democrats voted against it, of course. And it's been wildly successful.
What you did was narrow the eligibility for certain people to get access to the ACA subsidies. What they want to do is undo the changes that Republicans made in that. But basically, wouldn't that only affect people who do have legal status, people who are refugee seekers here in the United States, asylum seekers here?
Those are two totally different issues. Now, they've created this as a new argument that they have as to why they should not keep the government open, but they're arguing a December policy debate for a September funding issue. The subsidies that you're talking about don't expire until the end of December.
No. Those are the subsidies for just everyday Americans. That's one thing that obviously has been the main premise of their argument. But you're saying they want to give free health care to people who are in the United States illegally.
That is exactly what the effect will be.
But when I looked at it, there's a little nuance because they want to undo changes that y'all made, narrowing who is eligible to get that. Those are people who are refugee seekers, asylum seekers. They're not technically people who are here illegally, just cross the border.
And then here goes the second part of this clip, which we're going to pick up in this conversation. Amina, if you could please play this second clip. Thank you so much.
Who are here illegally, healthcare is not exactly what is in their proposal.
No, it is 100% what their
immigrants
proposal.
Who have legal status,
no,
and you're just
Caitlin,
disagreeing on who's eligible. I looked at it, actually, because I was curious about your argument yesterday.
You should study the CBO's analysis that they just put out a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that about the 1.2 million people. You're basically arguing about who has legal status, people who are seeking refuge here or seeking asylum.
No, I'm making sure that we are making sure in our provisions that we sign into law have ensured that health care benefits go only to eligible U.S. citizens.
Chuck
Schumer's
proposal.
Federal law was not being enforced. That's the whole point. We had to fine-tune that so that we could strengthen the health care program.
That is what we call a lying liar who is lying. There is nothing in the provision that the Democrats are putting forward that would allow people who are undocumented to be able to get access to health care benefits. But I got to ask you, even if there were, does that mean that all Americans should lose access to health care because there is a handful of people who exist in only the Republican mind because they don't actually exist in real life who are undocumented who also get access to benefits? These are things that we have to ask ourselves because right now there's a whole lot of people who are about to lose access to their health care. And basically, we have a situation where this government shutdown, it's not about a government shutdown. It's about Project 2025 cosplaying as a government shutdown. And there are some folks who are out there who are saying, why are Democrats fighting so hard for health care? You know, they let the government shut down. Get it correct. The Democrats ain't got not a lick of power because voters did not send them to Congress with the numbers that would allow them to be an effective check. The Republicans are in charge of the House. And we know they're in charge of the House so much so that they are committed to willful, violative type of power because they're refusing to swear in. What is that woman's name? Ariel Gravila, the woman who was just elected in a special election in the state of Arizona. She would be the 218th vote for releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files. They would rather shut down the government than swear her in. They have refused to swear her in because she's a Democratic representative. Basically, we're in a situation where the Democrats are trying to fight to ensure that people are going to have access to health care. And I know there are some folks who are like, why is health care that big a deal? Y'all acting like, not y'all, but y'all's cousins, acting like Luigi Mangione did not become an international superhero for what he allegedly did to that man, Brian Thompson, who was the head of the United Healthcare Corporation, a healthcare corporation that is one of the most profitable healthcare corporations. Keep in mind that America is one of the only nations where our healthcare corporations can be traded on the stock exchange, where they make more money the more claims that they deny. Luigi Mangione also became a superhero because at about the same time that we learned about the unaliving of Brian Thompson, in front of that hotel that he was entering in New York City, remember what he was going to do in that hotel? He was going to a shareholders meeting where they were going to applaud him and celebrate the fact that they have made fucking goo gobs of money because they are essentially able to deny a whole lot of claims that should not be getting denied. That's the way that profit-driven health centers make their money, is by denying claims. And then we learn that corporations like United Healthcare were using AI, algorithmic systems that were essentially denying claims to the tune of 90% erroneously, which means 9 out of 10 people who were submitting claims were getting denied those claims erroneously because of the company's decision to use not human beings, but to basically use artificial intelligence with an algorithm that was designed to deny those claims intentionally. Let's not act like healthcare is not a big fucking deal in this country, but the reality is this. When the voters either went to the polls or voted for the couch, they had two choices, and those choices were the lesser of two evils for many of them. And some of you chose more evil. Some of you chose not to vote. Not you, but y'all's cousins. They chose not to vote, or they chose to vote for the Republicans. And so we got to ask ourselves why that happened, because voting is just how we make decisions. We were just talking with candidate for Newark City Central Ward Council, Amina Bay, in the previous segment. And we were talking about the fact that when you go to vote, you are hiring people who get to make decisions. And this is something that I go way more into in the podcast episode. Lurie breaks it down, which is going to be released today at 2:00. But essentially, your vote decides who gets to decide. And right now, the Republicans get to decide. And so the decisions that the elected officials have to make include, how are you going to distribute resources? And in a capitalistic society like this one, resources is money, honey. How much money are you going to give people for health care? How much money are you going to take away from people for health care? How much money are you going to give for schools to either equitably educate the children or give some money to some schools and deny it to other schools? How much money are you going to invest in hospitals or not? How much money are you going to invest in job training programs and job corps? Or are you going to shut down the job corps centers as the Republicans tried to do earlier this year? How much money are you going to invest in expanding higher education or cutting off people who are trying to seek higher education at the knees, the way the Republicans did when they defunded the Department of Education? They are attempting to balance the budget of this country on the backs of poor people, which the Republicans also did when they passed a big bitch ass bill so that they could give access to billionaires for what amounts to a haircut. What amounts to pocket change. You getting a couple extra $100,000 when you already a fucking billionaire, while people are losing houses, they're losing health care. And this is why the Democrats have finally drawn a line in the sand. Unfortunately, the line in the sand that they are drawing right now is a lot thinner than it could have been because they did not have enough people going into Congress. Now, some of you out there are going to say something, or your cousins, not you, going to say things like, well, the Democrats needed to talk to me nicer. They just didn't have a program. That is a foolish approach to elections. And here's why. White nationalists got to decide, and they won the election because you, not y'all, but your cousins, stayed home, which means you let white nationalists decide who was going to sit in the position of ultimate power in this country, because the other party that presented a platform didn't present it to you in a way that you liked. This is not... Elections are not where you're supposed to go to look for big dick or wet cat energy. That's not how this is supposed to work. You go to an election to decide who's going to have the power. And unfortunately, the people who have the power in this country right now are the people who are some maniacal psychopaths who do not mind destroying the entire nation if it is going to allow them to stay in positions of power. And we should not be surprised by that. Lyndon B. Johnson already told us about these people. They told us who they were. Lyndon B. Johnson, a white man, told us that when it comes to whiteness and the way that it functions, if you can convince the lowest white man that he is better than the best colored man, he won't notice that you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down upon and he'll empty his pockets for you. They are mad. These people are mad, and they are now in charge of running the country. And we got to have a conversation about what that means, because we're going to have to move different. We're going to have to move different. Today's the first day of the fourth quarter. This is the quarter where all the corporations make the most amount of money. Can't be no spending the way we often spend. Ain't going to be no investing in the economy the way we often invest in the economy, because that's going to be the only thing that breaks the political backs of these institutions and of these people who are willing to destroy this country so that they can get access to white supremacist power from now in perpetuity. We got to ask ourselves, what is it going to mean? Because if you're looking at what's happening with the courts right now, the courts are not holding. The Supreme Court barely holding. The lower courts are doing everything that they can, but the Supreme Court is firmly in the hands of the Republican Party, which is something that we told y'all about back in 2016 when people didn't want to vote for the Democrats because they didn't like Hillary Clinton because in the 90s she called us super predators. Yeah, that shit happened, but guess what? She didn't have a plan to wipe us off the face of the earth or return us to slavery. The Republicans do, and that's who is in charge right now. And so when people say, well, what can fix this? It ain't going to be the courts. It ain't going to be Congress. It's going to have to be the people. Look at what happened in Italy. They shut Italy down, 24, 48 hours, general strike. France regularly, they go on general strikes. Everything stops. Nepal, completely, Gen Z in Nepal, which we talked about weeks ago on the podcast and on this show. Them young people, Gen Z, they ran the government out with a couple of days of hard protests, which were dangerous, in which people, some 51, I believe, people lost their lives. Over 1,400 people were injured. They ran out the fascists. They ran out the people who were in positions of power because the young people said, no, we're not doing it. So I don't know what's going to happen in this country. I do know it seems like the only thing that would stop this train from barreling towards complete authoritarianism is going to be a general strike. Now, you got some general strikes where people just stay home and go to protest. You got some general strikes where people just stay home. And if you black, I'm suggesting if they start talking about general strikes, don't be one of them people generally striking and going out to them protests. You let the white people handle that. Stay your black ass at home, because it's about to get very, very dicey. They also plan to use this as an opportunity, and this is something I discussed way more extensively in the podcast. They plan to use this as an opportunity to really complete everything else that was happening in Project 2025. And this should not surprise anyone, because we told you this was in their book. They wrote this. We read it. We synced it. They told us they were going to fire hundreds of thousands of people. They have already gathered tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of resumes from the conservative MAGA sycophants that they want to replace the people that they plan to permanently fire during this shutdown. And oh yeah, they plan to do a whole lot of other things as well. Amina, if you could please pull the clip of Donald Trump talking about all the things that they plan to do during this shutdown, because it was never about the shutdown. It was always about completing Project 2025, which shouldn't surprise any of you that's been listening to me for any length of time. Let's take a listen.
Say about the state of the Democrat Party when they have a 33% favorability rating on average in recent months, and they're willing to shut down the government over health care.
They are shutting it down. We're not shutting it down. We don't want it to shut down because we have the greatest period of time ever.
You're in
I told you
control,
we have
dog.
$17 trillion being invested. So
run
the
every
last person
branch
that
of
wants it
government.
shut down is us. Now, with that being said, we can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible.
Here it is.
That are bad for them and irreversible by them.
Who's the them?
Like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that they like. And you
Like
know,
healthcare,
you all know Russell
education,
Vought. He's become very
housing.
popular recently because he can trim the budget to a level that you couldn't do any other way. So they're taking a risk by having a shutdown because of the shutdown, we can do things medically and other ways, including benefits. We can cut large numbers of people out. We don't want to do that, but we don't want fraud, waste, and abuse. And, you know, we're cutting that.
This is their wet dream time. They are fully enthralled in the wet dream. They are going to use this as an opportunity to finish all of the other things that they have intended and that they told us that they were planning to do. Again, the only thing that is going to stop this is going to have to be the people. And us not spending money is a really good way to begin thinking about what a general strike sort of situation could look like. We could also start using more cash and stop relying as much on cars. There was a phenomenal conversation yesterday on Karen Hunter's show where they were talking about some of the ways that we can insulate ourselves from authoritarianism and dictatorships. But basically, we're going to have to move real different. And that includes thinking about where we're sending our community members, where we're sending our children. In the podcast episode, I talk about this situation that took place. I believe this was in Florida, where this little boy, 6 years old, is in class and they're singing happy birthday to him, little black boy, and they're singing happy birthday. And the teacher says, "Do you want me to sing a special song that I made for you?" And sings happy birthday to you. You look like a monkey. You live in a zoo. And you see this little boy's face crumble. And yeah, in the podcast episode, I'm going to read to you the parents' response and how they are organizing. But part of moving different in this moment when authoritarianism is here means, why do you got your black ass child in a school where he is surrounded by predominantly white people? Like, what? We got to move differently. We moving different. And so it's not going to be enough to say, I tried to use the courts and I wanted to defend myself. Don't be in them spaces. Don't be, y'all. It's the end of Reconstruction, and I need us to understand what that means. They have demolished integration. And yesterday, in addition to all of this, they brought the military generals together, gathered them together. And again, I spend way more time in this in the podcast than we will have together today. But they basically instructed the American military apparatus to abandon the Geneva Conventions. These are the rules that were put into place to basically say when you go to war, you can't go ham on a motherfucker. You're going to have some restraints. And we got Geneva Conventions rules, limitations on how you engage in war because of horrific incidences where people were going into war and then coming across civilian populations and massacring them, annihilating them, bombing them from the sky, taking prisoners of war, and instead of treating them like the human beings that they are, who, yes, are on the opposite side of conflict, but who still have basic human rights, and abusing them, torturing them. That is why we have the Geneva Conventions. And it's not just that we have Geneva Conventions and rules on how we engage in war, which I think, quite frankly, is horrific. I'm very anti-military, although I'm an Army brat. I get it. I do not believe in supporting military for empire, but I understand that most of the people from our community who's in the military is there because of the poverty. And I get it. So this ain't about judgment, but it's not even about us having rules about how this country engages in war for the benefit of somebody else. It's so that when American soldiers are also captured, the people on the other side are not going to brutalize them, like what happened to Senator John McCain, whose entire career sort of centers around his story of being a public servant as a result of him being a prisoner of war. They told the military, we not doing no woke shit. Woke shit, they are basically kicking black men out the military because black men have a physical condition that does not allow them to shave in the same way that white boys can, because their hair grows out straight and flat and limpid and it just hangs to the ground. It don't do nothing. It don't live. It don't have no life to it. Black hair is vibrant. It is alive. It stretches towards the sun. The only kind of hair on the planet that defies gravity, and they don't like the fact that when it comes out of our faces and as you have a beard, you got to have a special condition. They have created conditions or pathways for black men to be able to participate in the military, even though they have this condition. And Pete Hegseth is like, we're not gonna be woke. No more beards. We're not gonna allow for any more anonymous tips about who's getting assaulted and who's getting abused, because there have been over 8,000 tips that were sent in to phone hotlines that basically would allow soldiers who have been sexually assaulted to say, this happened to me. I need someone to investigate. And you had to have this sort of system because for decades, women were in the military, and not just women, because men also can get raped. How about that? Let's tell the truth. People were in the military serving and then being violated, sexually assaulted by their superiors, sexually assaulted by their peers, and did not have a way out. Could not go to the police because you can't call the police for a rape that happened on the base. You got to call the military police. Pete, his own mama say he's trash. Hegseth says, nah, we getting rid of all that. He talks about how we don't need these things. There's no racism. Racism has been prohibited in the military, as has sexism and sexual assault. Rape is prohibited in the military. Meanwhile, Pete, his own mama say he's trash. Hegseth is talking about we don't need anything to prevent people from being racist in the military. We don't need anything to prevent people from being sexually assaulted in the military because we're not woke. And he got whole ass white nationalist tattoos all up and down his scrawny ass wannabe buff body. And he has been credibly accused of sexual assault at least 3 times. What the fuck are we doing here? They told the military that they're fat. If you have served, 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. If you have served, how did this land for you? Donald Trump told the military that he wants to use the deployments of military members, not just the National Guard, the active duty military. He wants to deploy them to American cities and use them as, quote, training grounds, because he says that we are fighting, quote, the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, yes, it is a phrase that white nationalists use. Yes, it is a phrase that fascist leaders have used all throughout history, the enemy from within. It should also feel pretty fucking familiar to you because Kamala Harris used that phrase extensively throughout her campaign, and she told us exactly what was going to happen. Amina, please pull that clip. Let's take a listen.
So here tonight, I will show you one example of Donald Trump's worldview and intentions. Please roll the clip.
Roll the clip.
The worst people are the enemies from within.
The enemy from within. Those people are more dangerous, the enemy from within, than Russia and China.
These people should be put in jail the way they talk about our judges and our justices. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
So you heard his words. You heard his words coming from him. He's talking about the enemy within Pennsylvania. He's talking about the enemy within our country, Pennsylvania. He's talking about that he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country. It's a serious issue. He is saying that he would use the military to go after them. Think about this. And we know who he would target. And we know who he would target because he has attacked them before. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. Election officials who refuse to cheat by filling extra votes and finding extra votes for him.
That's the redistricting
Judges
battle right now.
who insist on following the law instead of bending to his will. This is among the reasons I believe so strongly that a second Trump term would be a huge risk for America and dangerous.
She wasn't lying. She told you. She told all of us, this ain't new conversation. So do not allow the narrative that the Republicans are spinning right now about this government shutdown, saying, oh, the Democrats want to give health care to the undocumented. That's a whole ass, bullshit ass, motherfucking ass lie. It's just a lie. But the challenge is that Americans have a history of being willfully lied to. Going back to Lyndon B. Johnson, who told us everything we needed to know about how to engage and navigate and understand white people and the way that classism and racism has infected their brains and their psyche. He said again, if you can convince the lowest white man that he is better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pockets. He won't notice you're giving $20 billion to Argentina besties of Scott Bessent and the Treasury Secretary because it's going to bail out Argentina and benefit them. The poor white man won't notice that Argentina is then selling their soybeans to China because China refuses to buy them from America. The poor white man won't realize that when they are okay with hundreds of thousands of black people losing their jobs from the federal government, hundreds of thousands of black men and women being pushed out, the government done been shut down for us, but y'all were okay with that. Now y'all went to bat for Jimmy Kimmel, y'all went to bat for Steve Colbert, and now look at you, your whole fucking government shut the fuck down. But y'all didn't have an issue when it was black people who were struggling. Y'all didn't have an issue when it was an unemployment rate for us. And now look at where your unemployment rate about to go. Yesterday, we had 100,000 additional people who basically hit the unemployment rolls, not because they decided to mass resign, but because months earlier, Donald Trump and the Doge fuckery basically gave them deals that forced them out. And so now not only is the government already depleted by an additional 100,000 people who now have to find a job, but they are planning mass layoffs, all to fulfill Project 2025, which Americans voted for. I don't know how this ends, but I do know that for us in the global majority, we got to move different. We got to move different. That's the theme for this month. That's the theme for this era. And we played this morning in the Moment of Gratitude. You are all who don't listen on Urban View and who instead follow the podcast or YouTube, you guys will be able to hear the Moment of Gratitude we played today, tomorrow morning. But the sister in that Moment of Gratitude was talking about the fact that black people had a collective awakening. And now we are sort of weirdly feeling what life is like without being willing to center whiteness. And that is going to have to be a mood that we sit in for a very long time. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if Americans have the intelligence to actually think about, discuss, and plan for a general strike. They can barely do protests on a regular basis without black people there. Their chants suck. They don't have a good, it's what it is. They doing their best, but they ain't got no rhythm, and they ain't keeping us safe, so we can't bring the rhythm and the seasoning there. I don't know if Americans have the intellectual capacity to plan a general strike and fight for their nation. And I have to say their nation because they have made it clear that not enough of them think that we are a part of the nation, and a significant portion of them would rather we not be here. And we're going to have to think about what that means, because it would be tragic to have gone through 60 years of integration where we sacrificed as much as we did to try to integrate into spaces that were proactively designed and or intentionally designed to basically remove us, to basically exclude us. It would be tragic if we have not learned anything from the past 60 years of integration, if we did not learn the lessons from Reconstruction. It would be tragic to think that we are going to be able to go along and get along and not move different. I don't know what this looks like. I do know, however, that I have a very strange sense of calm right now. Call me crazy. I have a real sense of calm because it feels like we are awakening to realities, and they are being so overhanded in their desire to break this thing, and they are breaking this thing. And I, for one, am content to allow it to be broken. Ain't nothing I can do to save it. And frankly, is it worth saving? Is it worth saving a system that was at its best destroying us, marginalizing us, over-incarcerating us, undereducating us, and blocking us out from opportunities? We got a lot to figure out, and I would really suggest and very strongly encourage all of you to be in community, be in conversation. My group chats this morning were on fire. I got sister friends who's like, wait a minute, hold up. Wait a minute. Hold up. Is this the time? Lurie, was this what you was talking about? Yes. This is what I've been talking about. Make sure you got your passports together. Make sure you're doing research about what the great hereafter can look like. Remember, the world is far bigger than the borders of this nation, and you would not be the first to have to think about what it might look like to have to pick up and flee. They are explicitly encouraging the military to invade American cities. They are explicitly destroying the government's capacity to govern. Why would they do that if they ever planned on relinquishing power? We're going to hold it there and head into commercial break. 866-801-8255. If you are someone who has served, you are someone who has been a part of the military, I want to know how this landed for you. Karen Hunter opened up the airwaves yesterday. I wanted to make sure that we offered you. We only have a few minutes left before the show signs off and we pass the baton to Clay Kane. But how did this happen for you? What did this feel like for you to see the faces of the military sitting there stoically? And thank God they were stoic and did not applaud at all, because had they done so, that would have been a clear indication that they have gone from being apolitical into the very much political. But I, for one, am not willing to presume that their silence in the face of that was resistance. I'm not willing to assume that it was, because we just don't know at this point. If you served, let us know how that landed for you and give us some insight as to what it is that you think needs to be happening. We're going to get ready to go to commercial break. What is this? You said, what? Jonah? Hold on. Is this the person who was in the video from before in this message? This is something related to something that just happened on YouTube. Jonah, please use the chat. Is this? I think I owe somebody a thank you, but I'm not gonna say it until I can confirm. So I'm just gonna wait. YouTube, if this is real, if this is what I think it is, then I will reference this tomorrow. We're gonna go to commercial break right now. Sorry, Urban View. I just got a message and I was trying to get it together. But I apologize for those of you who had to listen to me try to produce in real time. We're gonna go to commercial break. YouTube, we appreciate y'all. Urban View, 866-801-8255. If you in the military, or if you are a veteran,